In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the next set of flossing cliches. And that is, how in the world do you know where to start your story? This is I Should Be Writing, Season 17, Episode 54.
Well, I should be writing. I should be working on my craft. I should be writing. I should be submitting my next draft. But I'm sitting home watching Doctor Who.
So hi there, welcome to I Should Be Writing, the podcast for wannabe fiction writers and creatives of all type, really. I'm your host, Mer Lafferty. I started this 16 years ago, this past Monday, when I had not sold any stories at all. And I'm still doing it now, and I've published 7 books? I can't even remember. And that's not a big number to lose track of. But then there's a small press and the self-pub, but traditionally published, I have 5 books. The 6th will be coming out October next year. So, I have built my career step by step and chronicled the whole way. All the mess for the past 16 years on this show. So, before we get started, I usually like to tell people where I am because I want to put my money where my mouth is, and this might be, what I want to say might go better in another episode about ADHD, but I did sit down for a couple hours this morning and write the outline for the next book in the Midsolar Murders series. And I got about 2,000 words of outline done, and I hate outlining. I hate it. I'm honestly not sure how much I'll stick to the outline, but I need an outline to show my editor. So, that's fun. So yeah, I got the vomit pass, as some people call it. I got that done, and yeah, that was my morning, really. Then I tried to eat, because eating is something one does, and then I came here. But I also like to talk about good news. The only good news I've had is my editor sent me the marketing copy for the book, and it sounds really good. And, I'm thinking, well, I'd read this. Did I write that book? Because that sounds pretty good. It's a weird feeling. But I was very happy with it. But if you guys have any good news, either here live in the chat or if you're listening later on the podcast, I want to hear it. Please tell me. We have an applause button. I think it works now. I think I fixed it with the new overlay. And if you are listening later, just email me and tell me you got good news, and we'll put it in the next episode. Awesome! Devo Spice has been accepted as a program participant at Worldcon, so I will see you there. That is awesome. Very cool. I'm excited. I haven't seen you in... Was it the last time I went to New York? Huh. Anyway, if you're going to Worldcon, then I assume there'll be a concert? Are you going to be doing that? Or are you going to be, paneling, talking about music? Anyway, whatever. I get to see you. I'm excited. Books came last night, Star-Eyed Green. That's great. Congrats. Another yay button. We got Sam took 2 writing workshops and didn't feel like a complete fraud. Very strange feeling. It is a weird feeling, but here's the applause for not feeling like fraud. That's a big step. Get to sing with my choir again. That's great, Kay Kimmy. Before 6 Wakes came out. No, it couldn't have been that long. It was 4 years. Hit my goal weight this morning, 27 pounds since May. That's great, Tree Lobsters. And Shale has the 5th rejection of the year. Shale, big yay for you. Great job doing the work. This is the dirty work, this is the pain, this is the awfulness, and you're doing it. So, congratulations. And Anne wrote, this is not writing related, but I joined the American Council of the Blind as a member at large. That's great. All right, well, lots of good news today. I'm so happy. Great job, guys, in writing and in life. So remember, if you are listening to this later and you have good news and you think we won't care, you're wrong. Send it to me. I'll say it on the show. I'll push the yay button. That's right. Okay, so what I want to talk about today, I call this the other flossing thing. This is something brought up in the Discord. I believe the kids are asleep mentioned it first. I'm not sure. But anyway, the topic is, how do you know where to start your story? And it's funny, I wanted to do this episode, but I'm not quite sure how, because I don't know quite how to answer it. Even though that I'm sorry, I don't like talking about the latest authors who have been behaving badly in public, but I gotta say that beginning Game of Thrones, where Martin did, is just something I have thought about for a long time. Once it came, I mean, in the first book, it was kind of obvious that the whole thing about Robert's Rebellion was a key factor in everything. Everything. But the question of, he didn't want to tell the story of those people. He wanted to tell the story of the effects of that action 20 years later. Which I've thought about so much, because one thing it did was it started in a relatively peaceful time. And it started with showing you the effects of, I mean, even though you don't know it, you're seeing the direct effects of all those things that happened. And why Daenerys is where she is, and why Jon Snow is who and where he is. But you don't know why until much later. But it was just an interesting story. An interesting reason why he started it where he did. He wanted to tell the story of the people that action affected most, besides the actual people who were fighting. But this morning when I started my my outline, not deadline, that's another thing, I just figured I would start it in a sort of conversation page. That's why we call it the vomit pass, because it's just all the ideas coming out and coming out. And it's funny because I knew where I wanted to start the story in the timeline of the story, but I'm like, do I start it with this person on the ship, or do I start it with this person waiting for the ship to land? And I think what I'm getting to is, one thing you need to think about in your story is where you're going to be concealing things and where you want to reveal things. I'll give you the bare bones of what I was dealing with. One woman on a spaceship is heading to Earth. On Earth, waiting for the ship, is a person from her past and a woman he doesn't know. And the woman he doesn't know is going to figure prominently in this story. And do I start with him looking at the woman and thinking, you're not like all the other people here waiting for this spaceship, who are you? Or do I start it with the person coming to Earth not knowing anything about this? Because if I say too much about that woman, that might not be what needs to be revealed there. So I can keep her, who she is, a little bit more of a mystery, if I start with the woman on the space station or a spaceship. So little things like that. And I wrote it a couple of times, and this was not like narrative writing. This was, like you telling somebody the plot to a story. So it was, so this guy's waiting here, and he sees this woman, and she sticks out, and even in talking about it, I'm thinking I need to start with the approach to Earth, because the woman on the ship is my main character, but the two people on Earth waiting for her have a major part in the story. And if I start with her, then I can unveil things at a slower pace than if I just say, wow, here are two people who's going to walk into this established character's life. This should be interesting. On a simpler note, some people just say that you start the story, and I guess if you're going for a short story, I'm talking about novels here, and I think you were asking about short stories. In that case, you start it when your character's life changes. Usually your character, they'll get up, they'll do their ablutions, they'll go to the place where they usually go in the morning, and somewhere along that way, something changes. Something affects their world that they're going to have to address. And when you're writing a short story, starting that in that spot is probably the best you can do. A whole lot of people like to ease in and do my character's waking up, and then they're doing this, and they're thinking about their test they have to take today, and they're having their breakfast, and really, we kind of, unless otherwise stated, we assume that the character's already doing that. We know they woke up in the morning because they're awake and they're outside. And you can write that if it helps you get into the narrative. But know that that's part of a draft, and you very likely should cut it. One of the things we used to do in the workshops I was in when I was in my MFA program was draw a line in the manuscript and say, this is where your story starts. And everything above it was just easing in. So, not putting in unnecessary stuff. Because frankly, the longer a story is, the more it's going to get you if it sells. But when editors receive stories near the top of their word count limit, and I'm speaking from experience here, they're going to look and say, is every one of those words worth it? I mean, could you have told this story in a way that makes this a little bit more affordable for me? I work for a magazine that lives on donations, so we don't have a benefactor or a larger publishing company funding us. And so when we look at, somebody sends us a really long story, it's we will demand more from that story. Just because it's we could buy 1.5 stories that are 6,000 words, or 2 stories that are 4,000 words. And I hate to say it, but it's true. At least in Escape Pod's world, that affects the choices we make. If we're low on funds, or low on the budget, we're going to have to be looking for more reprints and shorter stories. So keep that in mind when you're wondering where to start your story and what fat to cut. Because often getting up, having breakfast, taking a shower, getting dressed, all that stuff is unnecessary unless that is where the story changes. Does somebody get a phone call during breakfast that interrupts things? Are they awoken by a gunshot in the middle of the night and not by their alarm clock at 6? This may sound counter to what I just said, but it's writing, and it's not just connect the dots easy. Sometimes people get the advice of, you need to start it when something changes, or start it when something's exciting. And then, so they're just my character's running from a gunman down the city streets. And they think that's exciting. That's in media res. But the problem with that is we have no idea who that person is or why we should care at all. So another thing you need to keep in mind is hitting the emotional plot points as well as the just the regular, you want to call it save the cat or hero's journey or heroine's journey or whatever, hitting those plot points. There's also emotional points you want to hit that make the reader care about the person. This is why the whole save the cat action is considered important for people who may not be likable. Because if you give us somebody who only shows something terrible and no emotional anything, then it's hard for people to be emotionally connected or invested. We've been watching Ted Lasso, and I am just more and more fascinated by the character of Roy Kent, and apparently he's one of the writers for the show, which is beautiful. But Roy Kent is a very foul-mouthed, grumpy soccer player. He's old for the sport. He's slowing down. He's rude to everybody. And yet, you see him with his niece, and he's not any different to her. He just, he'll take her somewhere, and he'll give his very foul-mouthed opinion of this doll store, and she'll be just walking along, just smiling away. She loves her uncle, and this is his save the cat. Is no matter what he's saying and the gruff way he's saying it, his actions are saying this is a very kind man. And it's just hard to tell. And he's a really complex character. And I want to say more of what he's doing, but that would be referring to season 2, and I want everybody to go watch it if you haven't watched it yet, because it is perfection in television. We're pretty close, I'd say. But anyway, Ted Lasso's on Apple. You have to pay for it. I'm sorry, but right now they have Ted Lasso and The Mandalorian, and what's the other one they have that we're watching? Central Park. There's Central Park 2. Sorry? Schmigadoon, yes, Schmigadoon. So there's a lot of good stuff on Apple right now, and I'm not sponsored. So, yes, Roy's almost comedically growly in season 2. So, yeah, and I need to watch the beginning of Ted Lasso again, because I don't know when we get to the point where Roy has the save the cat thing, because we're really focused on Ted Lasso in the early episodes, because it is a fish out of the water story. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's just Ted Lasso is the lovely feel-good TV show right now that covers a woman trying to destroy her ex-husband's football team in England by hiring... She got the team in the divorce, but she still wanted to ruin it, so she hires an American football coach from the Midwest who is just got Pollyanna positivity. And it doesn't matter what you say to him, he'll still manage to turn it around and be okay. And, as the story goes, you realize he's not a doormat and he's not stupid. He's just very positive. And it's awesome. Just really wonderful to see that. And the other characters are very good. Schmigadoon is a play on Brigadoon. It's a musical about a couple that gets lost in this town that really looks like a set on a stage, and people break into song all the time around them. And it's really well done. Christian Chenoweth is the the antagonist. And if you look at her on Twitter, the episode that came out last week was, she had a big song that was all in one take, and she pointed it out because you can see, because the camera never leaves her, and she's dancing around and getting on a wagon and riding it. It's very well done, and she's like, this is one of the high moments of my career, is that scene she shot. And all the songs are parodies of classic musicals. This was the T is for Trouble, or song they had in Music Man. And there's a song parodying Do Re Mi that's about, you're shaking your head. Are you saying don't say this, or it's one of the characters is trying to explain reproduction to somebody to have gotten pregnant and still don't know how it happened. So she sings them a little song, and it's to the tune of Doe a Deer, and I won't say anything else, but Schmigadoon's quite good too. I'm getting off topic. I'm sorry. I just find there's really good storytelling going on in Apple right now. So, when you're starting your story, think about, where exactly does the story begin? Think about what point of view to use. That's a really important part. You shouldn't have too many points of view in a short story, but you can have 2, maybe 3. And I know there have been people who've probably pulled off a lot more, but that's like, half-court basketball shot. Yeah, there are people who can't do it, but don't expect to succeed. I know I've told this story before, and I don't mean to pat myself on the back too much, but it is a problem I solved that I was very, very happy to solve when I wrote the novelization of Solo. I had the script and I had the middle grade book for reference, and suddenly I got frozen thinking, how am I going to retell this scene that people probably have already seen in the movie and has already been described once by the middle grade writer? And I felt like I was plagiarizing the same people working on the same medium as or same story as I was, which felt strange, but I still had to do it in my own words, and I suddenly realized that I got to choose what point of view every scene was in. And that, opened it up to me. And it also made the story richer, because most of the movie you see from Han's perspective. But you never know what anybody else is really thinking. And once I started giving various scenes and various other points of view, it became a lot easier for me. So, I guess that is all I have to say. If you have anything in chat to ask specifically about this, I'll go ahead and take it. But it's still a troubling thing for me, because I'm still struggling with it. I'm not feeling like I can give you a formula or anything, but if you're doing something short, think about where the story starts. Remember that we have to care about the person. And if you're doing something longer, try a few different approaches to the story and see where you can introduce something that's a mystery that won't be revealed for a little while. Or in Martin's case, several books. And I think that's about it. The reason why I'm calling this flossing, if you didn't listen to the last episode, is there's a lot of advice that we get tired of hearing, and sometimes they're said so often that we don't even think about what they mean. We just think you're just saying writerly platitudes and trying to help me. And really it's, last time we talked about raising the stakes. what exactly does that mean and how do you do it? And yes, we will be covering show don't tell, the bane of every new writer and established writer. I'll probably cover passive voice too, because passive voice gets a bad rap. Yes, you should use action verbs most of the time, but passive voice is not something you should cut out entirely. Also, one time I had an agent who changed one of my active sentences to passive voice, and that's when I thought, I'm not sure we're right for each other. But I digress. I appreciate everybody listening to me live or later recorded. If you want to find me online, I'm at murverse.com. You can email a question for the show or just a question for me at bindingmur@gmail.com. You can visit the live streams on Twitch. I've pretty much moved every one of them to 2 p.m. So Monday at 2, Tuesday at 2, Wednesday, I'm tentatively saying we're doing Ditch Diggers on Wednesday, but I have to get Matt's approval for that. And then gaming at 4 for Wednesday, and then back to 2 o'clock on Thursday. And that's twitch.tv/MightyMur. Patreon and Jemmy and Coffee are all ways you could support me, in addition to subscribing to the Twitch channel. Really appreciate anything you can give, and if you can't give, then spread the word. I'd appreciate it. Your eager description of how much you love this show is a lot better than me saying, hey, listen to my show. So anything you can do is appreciated. So I will see you be recording again on Tuesday next week. If you don't catch me live, I hope you catch it in the feed. And until then, you should be writing.
I do this to myself?
This podcast is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you would also like to join the ink-stained fabulists, go to patreon.com/mightymur.
Up on that shelf, on the spine of a paperback.